Hi everybody, it's Neel Modi here from Song Talk Radio. Hope everyone's staying safe during this pandemic crisis time and with all the self-isolation that we're all experiencing. Hopefully everyone's being able to spend a little bit more time in their home studios doing some songwriting, recording, producing. I know that's been the case for me. I've spent a little bit more time than usual in my home studio, and today I just wanted to share a little bit about one of the productions that I'm working on currently, and it's a remix project based on a songwriting challenge that we did on the Song Talk Radio podcast a few months ago. If you're curious about that, I'm including a link in the description below to the podcast episode where we went through this songwriting process. And basically the gist of it is that Mike, one of the co-hosts of the show, shared his song as an answer to the songwriting challenge. And it was this beautiful acoustic guitar-driven ballad that he had written and performed. And his arrangement basically was the acoustic guitar, his vocals, a little bit of synthesizer, some bass, some drums. And he asked us on the show if we wanted to do a remix of his project. And for that project, I've taken it on and I've sort of taken his, medium tempo acoustic ballad and sort of turned it into an up-tempo electronic dance music / electro-pop kind of arrangement. So I just wanted to start this session with a little bit, give you a little bit of taste of what his original song sounded like. If you want to hear the whole thing, please follow the link to the podcast below. You'll be able to hear that there. But in any case, here is a little snippet of Mike's original arrangement for his song Rich in Love.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there. No amount of wishing makes it so. If I could, I'd climb back in that double bed we share. But I pour your coffee in a cup and try not to wake you up. I kiss your head before I'm out the door.
So that was Mike's original song, Rich in Love. And I'll give you just a little taste first of my rearranged, remixed version of his song. So that's my remixed electronified version of Mike's song. So I just want to take you guys through a bit of the process that I went through. Certainly talk about the tempo change, which was pretty evident, I think, in that. The process that I used behind that. I'll talk about some of the additional synthesizer tracks that I added and the drums and stuff. We'll talk about the vocal processing process, and as well some of the interesting effects and things that I used on this track. So let's start diving in. So the first thing I wanted to do with Mike's track was speed it up. And I knew that he gave us his original production files, all his stems and everything, so we knew that the original song was at 80 beats per minute. And I wanted to sort of keep things in nice round numbers, so I decided to try it at 100 BPM, thinking 80 to 100, that must be a pretty easy nice round number ratio. So what I did first was I exported his song simply as his vocal track and a piano track that I actually played myself, and the piano track was really just the block chords of his song, just to pin down the vocal and give a rhythmic sense to the piece. So here's a little bit of what that sounded like.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there. No amount of wishing makes it so. If I could, I'd climb back.
So that's Mike's song at 80 beats per minute. And all I did here in my software, which is Cakewalk by Bandlab, by the way, took that audio recording, changed the length of it by 80%, and I ended up with this.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there. No amount of wishing makes it so. If I could, I'd climb back in that double bed we share.
And of course, I was just guessing at the 80%, but in order to confirm that it was actually working at 100 BPM, I can just turn on my metronome and hear the click along with the recording to see if it actually lines up.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there. No amount of wishing makes it so. If I could, I'd climb back in that double bed we share. But I pour your coffee in a cup and try not to wake you up.
So I get the idea that 100 BPM is going to work. That is going to be my target tempo. So I can work with that. So I can take these scratch tracks that I made and just tuck them away. Don't really need them anymore. And then we'll get into a little bit of the other production stuff that I went through. So in order to start building the remix track, I needed to take out some of the tracks that I wanted to keep from Mike's original recording. So obviously I kept the vocal track and as well compressed that by 80% to get it to line up with my 100 BPM template. And as well, Mike had this electric lead guitar part in his chorus, and I did keep that, and I'll be showing that to you guys just a little bit later, what I did with that part, because I like that. But the rest of his original arrangement, the acoustic guitar, the bass guitar, the MIDI drums that I actually provided for him, those are all long gone. I wanted to really take that over-processed electronic take on this thing, so I wanted to rebuild all his instruments. And I basically started with the bass, and I'll give you a little taste of what that sounds like. And this bassline figure, I want to talk about the musical approach I took to this as well, because Mike provided us with the lyric sheet and the chord sheet as well, or the chords to go along with his song. And in his verse and in the chorus, in fact, he's got these inverted chords, C over G and G7, a little bit more tension than just major or minor chords, and A minor 7 in the chorus. And again, that C over G keeps on occurring in his song. And I wanted to make this arrangement sound more poppy and open, so I basically took out the inversion. So I would just play C major instead of the G bass, and as well the A minor 7. I took out the 7, just played a straight A minor. So again, I want to keep it more open and poppy, and that's how I did that with the musical approach. And again, this sort of bass line really speaks to that, because it's really playing the roots with a little bit of extra up and down the scale kind of thing, but more or less roots and thirds sort of thing to give that feel. And if you're curious, that bass sound came from the synthesizer Loom, and as well introduced a keyboard sound. That's from hybrid 3. So that's pretty straightforward. A pad, just to fill in those gaps. Vacuum Pro is the synthesizer. And as well, I've got a lead synth that comes in and out of the song. And that one as well from Hybrid. And of course the drums. Battery 808 kit, and basically loops that I built up here in Cakewalk with a few fills, but most of it is just loops all the way through, a couple more fills. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how I process Mike's vocal track for this remix. And again, I'm taking a very hyper-produced, electronified approach to this entire song. So I want to really electronify his voice as well as much as I can. So I'm going to start with his original lead vocal, what it sounded like.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there. No amount of wishing makes it so.
So if I just take those first two lines of the verse, I'm going to start with Melodyne. And here, the first thing I'm going to do in Melodyne here is to split the notes where Melodyne maybe didn't pick up that there's actually two notes for a word. And I want to take out some of the breaths as well.
TV is a window, the window to a
little breath.
Window to a world that isn't there. World that isn't there. No
breath there.
There. No amount of wishing makes it so. Makes it so. It's so.
Okay. Oh, there's a little bit of a ending bit there. I can get rid of that. And as well as a little beginning in breath.
TV.
Okay. So now that I've done that, I'm going to take all these notes and I'm going to snap to C major scale. And I'm going to center them all perfectly on the notes, 100% centered. There's also a pitch drift, which I can reduce slightly. And okay that. So then we end up with this.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there.
So the next thing I'm going to do is use my pitch modulation tool. So you notice in Melodyne, these blobs represent the sort of pitch centers, more or less, of the notes. But the line, the little squiggly line there, is a more accurate depiction of where the actual pitch is within the note. So if there's a little bit of vibrato, which, you know, every singer has naturally a little bit of vibrato in their voice, that line represents those frequency changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten all that. Just do a double click on all the notes, and that flattens all the vibrato out. So starting to sound a little bit more like a synthesizer. And the last thing I'm going to do here is the glide in between each note. I can reduce that as well. I can increase it as well, but I'm going to reduce it so that each note doesn't glide between each other. They just literally snap between each other. So now it's starting to sound a little bit more literally like you're playing a synthesizer, and all the notes are separated out. And I'll just make a last few adjustments here.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there. There. No amount of wishing makes it so. makes it so.
So that's it for the melodyne process, and here's what the final vocal sounds like.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there.
So the moves I made on it for the effects are a pretty significant EQ curve, scooping out a lot of the lows and mid-lows, a little bit of resonance here at the 2K mark. A substantial amount of compression. Watch the compression needle here.
TV is a window to a world that isn't there. No amount of wishing makes it so.
So quite a bit of compression. And finally, a chorus effect and an eighth note delay on it. So Mike had this really cool electric lead guitar part in his song that I liked, and so in addition to his vocal, that's the only other part of his arrangement that I took out. But of course, since I'm doing an electrified version of this, I needed to process the crap out of it. So I'll start out, give you a little sense of what it sounded like from his original track, of course reduced or quickened up to get from the 80 BPM to the 100 BPM. Which sort of worked, in his 80 BPM version for his ballad, but I wanted to give this a little more rhythm. So in addition to the EQ of it, again, the kind of, EDM style, scoop out a lot of lows, resonance in it. I also gave it this mini filter from Arturia, which is basically just a low-pass filter. But you can, of course, modulate it, which is pretty cool. So we gave it a low frequency oscillator. You can actually sync it to your host tempo. So here I've got it set to 1/8 note, basically. And the modulation amount, you can sort of see it light up there on the cutoff frequency. So every eighth note, it's opening and closing that filter. Opening and closing it every eighth note, just alternating back and forth. And so with the filter on, this is what it sounds like. So that gives it a bit of movement. And as well, the replica delay plugin from Native Instruments on the quarter note delay. So with that on. So, and in context, so in Mike's original recording, the second half of his verses were sort of had this lo-fi effect on it, and this carried through on the vocal stem as well. When it came in for my arrangement, the vocal already had this lo-fi effect on it. So I wanted to extend that lo-fi effect to the rest of the track, and just give you a sense here what it sounds like.
If I could, I'd climb back in that double bed we share. But all you got me in a cup and trying not to wake you up. I kiss your head before I'm out the door.
So that's the lo-fi effect, and I knew I wanted to use this plugin by Isotope. Isotope Vinyl it's a perfectly free plugin. You go to Isotope's website and download it. It's a really cool plugin. I've been using it for years. Yeah, you can sort of give it a decade that you want it to sound like, so it gives it that old school lo-fi effect. And as well, you can put dust sounds and scratchy sounds and wear, electrical noise, and all this sort of stuff. You can blend that into your sound. One of the limitations to the vinyl plugin is it only has a bypass button, which means it can either be on or off. If it had like a mix knob or a wet dry knob, you could actually automate, blend in the lo-fi effect and then blend it back out, or fade it back out, or crossfade it with the non-lo-fi version. But you can't do that with this plugin. It's only bypass or on. It's only on or off. So the way I got around that is in my mix setup here. I've got all my tracks basically sum up to this submix bus. So everything eventually ends up in the master, but before it gets to the master, everything is combined in this submix bus. And from the submix, I sent a pre-fader send to another bus called the submix lo-fi, and that's where I put the lo-fi effect. So and then I could automate the volumes of these two buses and basically crossfade them so that during those lo-fi sections, the lo-fi volume is up, the other one is down, and vice versa for the rest of the song. And that's why you need to send this as a pre-fader send, meaning that no matter where this volume level is for this bus, the copy that gets sent to this bus is always full volume. It doesn't matter what the volume here is showing. That's when here you switch it from post to pre, so it's pre-fader. So it doesn't take into account the volume level of this bus to send to this one. So if you look, I actually have it here in my tracks as well. There's the submix, and there's the submix lo-fi. So you can see how I've automated the volume where one goes down as the other one comes up, and then vice versa for coming out of that section. So just play it through here again. So you notice at the end of that verse going into the pre-chorus, there's that cool little electronic glitchy effect. I'll show you how I set that up. I'll just play it here. And I've got a few of those throughout the song. And the way I did that is I used this plugin by Native Instruments called The Finger, which basically has a bunch of these effects, smudges and stretches, and high-pass filters and comb filters, pitch shifts, pitch random, stretch jitters, something called Lose It, reversing. It's got all sorts of different effects, and they're all mapped to MIDI notes. So basically you can play it in real time, whatever audio is being processed. You can sort of hit keys on your keyboard and play it as if it were a real musical instrument, hence the name The Finger. So it's a pretty cool effect. I don't use it that often, but it is pretty neat. So I'll just play through it again here, and I'll show you what is going on in that section. So we went through like a smudge, a pitch random shift, something or other. There's what the MIDI looks like. So it's kind of a cool thing, and I've used that throughout the song. Again, in moderation, you can't really play too heavy with it, or you'll lose all manner of musicality with it. However, the way that I mixed it actually, or set up the mix, is that in my buses again, I've got vocals, instruments, and drums in three buses, and the vocals and the instruments are routed to this other bus called V plus I, vocals plus instruments, and the drums go directly to the submix, and then the vocals and instruments go to the submix. So in other words, when I use this Finger plugin, it's only affecting the vocals and the instruments. It's not affecting the drums, because I wanted the drums to really hold the beat underneath, and all this glitchy stuff that happens on top. Originally, I had tried it with processing the entire track with the glitchy thing, and it got, to me, my ears anyway, got a little too glitchy. So I decided to try this, and it seems to work a little bit better. The drums hold the bass of what's going on underneath, and all this glitchy stuff can happen on top. Okay, that's it for my remix process. I did send a version of this to Mike, and he really dug it. He thought it was lots of fun and pretty cool. And, you know, despite being really far removed from where he started the original track, because as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to remix a project, may as well have some fun with it and really change it up and put your own spin on it. And hope you enjoyed watching this video. Hope to do more of these production videos as time goes on. Just give you guys a little sneak peek into my home studio, and I'll just play the whole song for you through through my software here, so you can listen to the whole thing. And in the meantime, stay safe, and hope everyone's enjoying the extra time you can spend in your studios. Thanks.